We're a landscape architecture firm and a nursery, and more recently we've opened a small cafe on West Alabama called Tiny Boxwoods. We opened it about 3 years ago, and it's been a successful, reasonably successful little cafe. And more recently, obviously, we purchased the JMH property in late March, and our goal there is to open a second location for the Tiny Boxwoods Cafe in the JMH building. And part of that business model includes beer and wine sales, and that's why I'm here tonight. The rules changed in the mid-'80s from 1,000 feet from the front door of an establishment to the front door of the school. We were in compliance with that. The rules changed to 300 feet from the property line of any business that wants to sell beer and wine, 300 feet to the school property line. We're about 200 feet, so we missed the mark. From our door to the establishment to the property line, we're well beyond 300 feet, but again, we're 200 feet from property line to property line. So the questions and the issues surrounding this, I guess, are: would an additional 100 feet make that big of a difference? Our cafe is not a bar by any stretch of the imagination. Our existing cafe, we've only sell beer and wine there. We could have applied for a hard liquor license, but we have no interest in that. We have no interest in our cafe becoming a destination for drinking. The beer and wine that we offer is it's a fairly limited selection, wine selection. We only offer it really as a part of our offering of menu items. It's really just a part of the dining experience. So we're not a bar, we're not a wine bar. We don't want to be a destination for people to come up and drink just wine. Again, it's part of the dining experience. Our wine glasses don't even have stems on them, which drives the wine people crazy. But we really just want our menu's a fairly limited menu. It's fairly seasonal, and we want to keep it simple and keep our beer and wine menu simple as well. We don't have any signage in the building that promotes beer and wine. We won't have wine bottles or beer bottles as a part of the decor. There won't even be wine racks in there. Again, we like to think of it as a chef-driven cafe that's really revolves around the meal and is a place for people to come and meet and share a nice breakfast, lunch, or dinner together.
My request is that you vote against the variance. My feeling is that the critical nature of any school zone is to protect children. And I moved here in 2009, and I was very excited by the progressive nature of West University, especially when I heard about the cell phone ban in school zones, and now, of course, the texting ban. Even our neighboring city, Houston, has not put up signs because of budget constraints. But West University's done this because we feel it's important for our children. And ultimately, I do understand that any law is a balance between protection of society and, of course, individual freedoms. But when it comes to school zones, I think the protection of our children is paramount. And so for that reason, I feel that any potential possibility of having alcohol-impaired drivers in a school zone, to me, is frightening. Some people make the argument that businesses and individuals in West University are very responsible, and I agree with that. Mr. Thompson seems like he wants to run an excellent business. And the individuals in West University, I feel, are very responsible citizens. But there's always a small fraction that could potentially create problems. And I think when it comes to a school zone, there's no room for error. And I find our school zone especially to be a little bit on the dangerous side, just because it's a large elementary school with over 1,100 children, and there's kids walking all over the place. Some people will make the argument that it's parents' responsibility to protect their children, but this is an elementary school where we have 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders who walk home after school. We have Little League games where a lot of the kids are walking by themselves there. So I just feel that, you know, if we feel that the safest thing for our children is to ensure that there's no alcohol impaired drivers in that area, then I think that's the critical thing here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Both my neighbour next door, Katie Holt and Kevin Holt, that live directly next door, couldn't be here tonight, but they also said they would like to say that they were firmly in support of Tiny Boxwood's opening. We've been, to be fair, a meeting on the street that we live. One of the neighbours opened their house and we had a question and answer session with Mr. Thompson. He was more than accommodating with, you know, talking about the design and talking about what his plans were, parking, and trying to keep everyone happy. And, you know, I just think he's done a really tremendous job trying to marry everybody's hopes and, you know, what we wanted and what we didn't want, and try and find an accommodation for everyone. I think he's done a really great job with that. My kids also walked to Westview Elementary, and I was PTO president there a couple of years back. And the traffic is always bad. No matter what you do, the traffic will always be bad. It's a huge school. It's never intended to be such a huge school, and I appreciate that it is dangerous with parked cars and children and toddlers and strollers and mothers talking, and it's complicated. I don't think we can escape that problem. However, I think probably they're equally at danger with people jaywalking, cars doing illegal U-turns, people talking, Westview Little League parking, softball parking. You're never going to get away from that. So I don't know that it'll make such a difference. At least there's parking. And the idea is, as Mr. Thompson said, that we're supposed to be walking there. And that was his goal. I like the idea of the walking. We've tried to do it at Westview Elementary, encouraging people not to drive their kids to school, but to walk to school. So it's just another element of that you're trying to encourage people to walk to neighbourhood destinations, which would decrease your problem with cars. I think as a neighbour who lives so close to it and having to walk past it all the time, for 3 years it's laying empty and it just gets worse and worse looking, and they've tried to, you know, keep the grass cut and whatever. It looks awful, and I'm just thrilled that someone wants to put the time and effort to put something in. Not that it's just a convenience store, not that some nasty, just tearing it down and making a parking lot, building yet another great big lawyer box house sitting on there. None of this is appealing to me. So I think Mr. Thompson's doing a great job putting in a restaurant that is nice. It's, how do they say it in Alaska, they call it Tony. It's kind of upper market. It's not a cafe, it's not something to drop in. There won't be 500 kids running around the parking lot. I think this is a good thing. So I'm looking forward to somewhere that we can walk for either coffee in the morning, lunch, dinner, all of these things. There's a myriad of things that we're going to be able to enjoy, not just the garden centre part of, you know, the plants or whatever, but it'll be a nice thing to look at and it'll be a nice thing to enjoy. So I also kind of get the impression that the idea is that women who lunch are going to be there drinking excessively with lots of wine and then staggering over to get their kids from school. I don't really know that is going to happen. I don't believe that that will happen. Just, it sounds bizarre to me. Most people stop drinking way before that. You maybe have a glass of wine with lunch, but you have your kids to pick up. So I think the majority of people are drinking responsibly if they're having a glass of wine with lunch.
I move to grant the variance requested by Tiny Boxwood.
I'll second.
Okay. At this time, does anybody on council have any other questions they want to ask Greg before we vote? Okay. At this time, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the motion is granted with George sustaining and Chuck Guffey not being present at the meeting because he's out of town. So it's unanimous as to those voting.